So hello everybody. As Jovana said, my name is Aleksandra Papić. I'm our school's treasurer and finance committee lead. Joined by me today, some here, some not here necessarily, are other finance committee members, including Jelena Radulović, who is a chartered professional accountant, and Dr. Ognjen Višnjevac, who actually has his own clinical practice and helps us run our budgets and make sure that everything is up to par as we work together on building this school. So with that said, I'll be spending the next few minutes walking you through our tuition fees and structure as a nonprofit entity, and give you an idea of how we actually came to the number that we came to. I want to emphasize that our goal throughout this entire process has been to make tuition as affordable as possible for the parents joining us, while also having enough to cover the costs of operating the school, so making sure we can always break even, and have a small percentage of funds set aside as well for future growth of the school as our school population expands. And so with that said, the number we came to was $12,500 per child annually. This is incredibly comparable to to very similar religious private academic institutions. And with that said, in terms of tuition structure, so the expectation from a payment schedule perspective is that 50% of tuition is paid upfront prior to the start of the school year, and then the other 50% is paid prior to the second half of the school year. Should you have more than one child interested in enrolling in the school, you become eligible for a sibling discount, which is 15% off the second child, 20% for the third child, and God willing, if you have a fourth child as well enrolling in the school, they do get a 30% off. The tuition will not cover any ancillary expenses, so that includes things like school field trips, school uniforms, which we're actually getting quotes for at the moment, and before and after school care. Now I'm going to walk you through a breakdown of how the tuition funds will be allocated to run the school. The largest expense, as you can see here on my beautiful pie chart, is that the tuition will be covering is staff salaries. So we have three teachers, three full-time teachers, that is, one for grade 1, one for grade 2, and one full-time teacher covering JK and SK. We'll also have a full-time early childhood educator for JK and SK as well, and a full-time school administrator. So this school administrator is responsible for making sure that things run smoothly. They're responsible for coordinating with parents and making sure that all appropriate appointments are set up. In terms of part-time teachers will also be brought in for specialty subjects. So that includes some of the subjects that we've talked about today, including religion, including physical education, and Serbian language as well. We do also plan to have a part-time school principal, which will be on payroll as well. I'll cover a breakdown of the operational expenditures, startup costs, and capital expenditures in the slides to follow. But on this slide, I do want to call out that blue sliver at the top, which is our capital building funds allocation. So this allocation is for, so as you can see, it's roughly 6%. That is to fund the future growth of the school. So that's making sure that as our school expands, we have appropriate funds that we're allocating to accommodate population growth. So capital and startup costs are the costs that we need to cover to get the school up and running in the first place. As you can see, the largest category here by far is supplies and equipment. So that covers what we need to outfit the classrooms and working areas. That means things like whiteboards, desks, tables, chairs, books, among other things. Professional fees are the second largest category. So this is all the fees that it takes to legally essentially start running a school, and all the required things that we need to do as a nonprofit entity. So that means things like getting various permits, charity applications sorted, and again, our official nonprofit entity registration as well. We've also gotten a few quotes from suppliers to anticipate that roughly 10% of our startup costs will go towards renovating certain parts of the school. The largest renovation being the upgrades that we need to make to our HVAC systems. And finally, as you can see, technology costs will be fairly minimal and will primarily be used to cover the system setup costs of phones and internet as well. Operating expenses, this category of costs is for the recurring costs that we need to cover to keep the school up and running. As I shared earlier, as you can see, by far the largest category in terms of operating expenses that we have is for staff. So all the staff that I mentioned earlier, as you can imagine, that's fairly substantial. Any company you look at, any organization you look at, their largest cost will be their employees. And so it's the same case here for us as a nonprofit entity. So when you look at the operating expenses category, that's going to be eating up a large chunk of our expenses year over year. Furthermore, other large category expenses that you can see here are the costs of building maintenance, recurring professional fees, so for example, yearly audits that we are legally required to do, as well as insurance for property, staff, and other liabilities as well. And so with that said, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have afterwards around tuition and expenses that we have as an organization, but I do have a call to action for all of you. So I'd like to invite you to our pre-registration, which is opening up as of tomorrow, so November 25th, and will be open until December 9th. Spots are limited to register for this school. We have a spot limit of 55 students. So if your students, it is first come, first served. So if you are not on that list and we do reach our maximum capacity of 55 students, unless a spot opens up, you will not be able to register for the school in the fall. A non-refundable fee is required at pre-registration, which is $300 per child. This $300, it's a deposit, right? It's a credit towards any future tuition that our students will pay. And it is, as I shared, non-refundable. And payments can be made via e-transfer, so that's to donate@svetysavashkola.com or check payable to our school. As you can see here, I see many of your phones are out. There is a QR code which will take you directly to the pre-registration link. And so with that said, I'd like to pass it back to Jovana.